I am so excited to welcome everyone that is here today for our Eco Career Day. My name is Julia Soto. I work for a nonprofit called Portland Workforce Alliance, also called PWA. Our organization works behind the scenes with many of the local schools here in the Portland metro area, as well as local industries and businesses, city governments and agencies like the ones we're here with today, to bring students like you career learning opportunities like this event and many others. Before we get started, I want to thank our partners for helping to organize and support this event by being here today, by sharing about themselves and their organizations. So a really big shout out to the City of Gresham, Northwest Youth Corps, Friends of Trees, and Johnson Creek Watershed Council. As I mentioned, we're super excited to learn all about you. So if you had a chance to answer the poll question that had popped up, please do so now. We'd love to learn more about who you are, if you're a student or a teacher, or if you're just a member of the community joining us today. And then for today, just to let you know what to expect, we're going to start off with a little bit of housekeeping, just to get everyone grounded on what to expect. We'll have a brief overview of what are eco careers, what are the types of opportunities in the environmental fields. And then we have 5 guests here with us today to share about their careers and the work that they do. But we also want to make sure you all have a chance to ask some questions. So we've got some time for Q&A, but we're not going to limit our time to just that one window. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to put those in the chat to us. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator for today, Nate Zansinger from Northwest Youth Corps.
Thank you very much, Julia. I appreciate that introduction, and welcome everybody to today's Eco Career Day. We're really excited to have you join us, and we hope you get a lot of information out of this. I know myself and my fellow panelists are really excited to share about what drew us into the conservation career path and why it's so beneficial. And we're really hoping to answer any questions you have and really draw your interests. So please don't be shy about sending a question through the chat function or speaking up at any point. We're here for you all. So again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to answering any questions. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. First things first is you will notice your video and your audio is muted. So if you do have a question, please again use that chat function to fire them off, and we'll get that answered as soon as possible. Also, you'll notice throughout this broadcast we have a few poll questions populating on your screen. We really would appreciate you taking the time to complete those thoughtfully. That's going to help us best serve you and best serve our audience in the future. We're really looking forward to seeing who best serves from this broadcast. We can already see that the majority of folks on are students, so thank you all for taking the time to join us. We know this school year is a little different than expected, but nonetheless, we hope you're safe and well. This session is being recorded for sharing and later viewing, so should you want to review any of the information you heard on today's call, that will be recorded and we'd be happy to get that out to you. Last thing, we are going to be awarding a $25 gift card to Pal's Books in Portland. So please stick around and for your chance to win that gift card, and that will be awarded at the end of the call. Okay. So I'd like to go over a land acknowledgement to recognize the ancestral people of our lands. We acknowledge the land on which we stand and which we occupy. The Portland metro area rests on the ancestral lands of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cathwamet, Clackamas, Cowlitz bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers, creating communities and summer encampments to harvest and use the plentiful natural resources in the area. We take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land, and we honor their legacy, their lives, and their descendants who carry on tribal traditions for present generations. So at this time, you'll notice a second poll question has populated on your screen. We're looking to see which school district you have joined us from today. And again, thank you and for your teachers and for any counselors that helped you learn about today's call. And at this time, please take a moment to fill out the poll question. Awesome. We'll give you about 10 more seconds here if you could take the time. Awesome. Great. Thank you all for taking that. So at this point, I'd like us to all just take a moment for a little bit of self-reflection. And I wanted to ask, what comes to mind when you think of a career in conservation? So for myself growing up, I always thought of a park ranger at either a national park site or a U.S. Forest Service land, wearing the hat and the uniform and going out and being really a steward of the land and a protector of our natural resources. They also serve in a variety of services such as interpretation, natural resource management, law enforcement, maintenance, and many more. So if you could all take the moment to think of what do you think when you think of a conservation job? And if you wouldn't mind sharing that in the chat function, we will go over a few. Okay. Awesome. So some professionals work in water quality, which is absolutely correct. We have park rangers, we have U.S. Forest Service district rangers, law enforcement, measuring data from local environments to test health of the environment. All really great career paths, all very beneficial as well. Ornithologists who study birds, that's a great response. Awesome. And also some marine biologists who study marine life in our planet's oceans. Great. Thank you all for sharing. For more background on some of the organizations that serve the environment in the Northwest, we've got a few different sectors. We have nonprofit, for-profit, and government. So a few examples of local nonprofits include Friends of Trees. For those in the Portland area and Eugene and across Oregon and the Northwest know of the great organization Friends of Trees, different watershed councils, soil and water conservation districts, the Audubon Society, the Blueprint Foundation, and many more. There's also for-profit organizations that do environmental consulting firms, landscape architecture, engineering, stream and habitat restoration, and communication firms. There's also government agencies such as the City of Gresham, Metro, Multnomah County, the National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, and many more. Hopefully you've heard of a few of those. If not, hopefully that gives you a good idea of some different work opportunities in the area. Awesome. Another poll result, we can see that many folks on the call prefer enjoying time outside or working outside. So that's great to see. Again, the environmental field will hopefully be a great fit for many of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'd like to introduce myself. So my name is Nate Zansinger. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at Northwest Youth Corps. So we're based here in Eugene, Oregon, but we cover all of the Northwest. So all of Oregon, all of Washington, and all of Idaho. That's our work area. So we're really privileged to get to work in 3 of the coolest states in the country. I get to lead our outreach and recruitment efforts to provide educational conservation experiences to youth and young adults. I'll go over that here in a minute. A little bit about myself is I like to say the reason I chose a career path in conservation is taking care of our planet and wildlife is the most important responsibility that we all have. And I want everyone to be able to experience that and take part in that. So thank you all again for your interest in conservation. Awesome. So Northwest Youth Corps is an organization, we are modeled after the Civilian Conservation Corps of the early 1900s. So back when our nation's public lands were first being discovered, back when westward expansion was rampant in our country, we needed people to take care of these beautiful scenic places. So the Civilian Conservation Corps was really one of the first organizations to do so. They created trails at our national parks that we know and love today, such as Yosemite, Yellowstone, Crater Lake National Park. Hopefully you've spent some time exploring our beautiful national public lands. So our organization, if you are a member with us, either a youth or young adult member, you're going to come out and do conservation work. So what is conservation work at Northwest Youth Corps? There's a few different projects that we spend our time doing. Habitat restoration, so that could include invasive species removal. Many of us in the state of Oregon know that Himalayan blackberry really spreads out across our landscape and in our yards, which is great. It produces beautiful fruit, but at the same time, it kills out native grasses and plants and shrubs. So it's devastating to not only the local fauna and flora, but also our natural environment here. We also conduct tree plantings with our partners, trail maintenance, and much, much more. So it's hard work. We use different tools, but it's really rewarding stuff, and it betters our environment. Our work is completed on public lands. So we work primarily with the U.S. Forest Service, the National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So with our government land management agencies, we also work with some non-federal partners such as the City of Eugene, Portland Metro, and some private landowners as well. We are a camping program, so that means this program lasts 4 to 6 weeks in length. It's a camping program, so that for that entire time, our members are camping with our crew. Our members are between the ages of 16 and 19. Again, we travel all over all of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho to complete those necessary projects. A project lasts 1 to 2 weeks in length. So a typical week is Monday through Friday. You're going to be camping and working at a designated site. This is going to be a remote area such as Mount Hood National Forest, the Willamette National Forest, or many places in Washington and Idaho as well. You're going to start out of Eugene, Oregon, Wenatchee, Washington, or Boise, Idaho. And then from there, as I mentioned, you're going to be dispersed throughout the tri-state region where you're going to be camping with your crew, working on these projects. Our programs are conducted in the spring. In the summer, we have 2 sessions, a first session and a second session. And then we have fall programs as well. So a typical day with us, you're gonna wake up early and you're gonna go to sleep early. You're gonna live with the sun. When you're out camping, as we know, the main light source when you're out at a campsite is gonna be the sun. So when you're working hard during the day, you're gonna need rest at the end of the day. So after meals and after prep with your crew, you're gonna be getting some rest in your tent. You're gonna wake up in the morning, you're gonna clean up camp, you're gonna have breakfast. And then from there, you're gonna hike to the project site. So most of the time, our campsite is going to be within a 2-mile hike from where you're going to be working. That might be a trail that needs restoration. That could be invasive species that need to get pulled out of there. It could be any number of things that is determined by our project partner. Once you get to the site, you're going to do a stretch circle to make sure your muscles are relaxed and you're taking care of any injuries you may have and your body's nice and loose and ready for the day. And then you're going to be using different tools. You're going to be using McLeods, Pulaskis, shovels, different things like that to complete critical project work at these sites. You're going to work from 8:30 a.m. until mid-morning, and then you're going to stop for a 15-minute break, and then you're going to stop for a lunch break after a few more hours of work, and then you'll have a mid-afternoon break, and then you're going to be wrapping up the day around 4:30. So it's a long work day, but again, it's really beneficial work. During those breaks, you're going to have snacks, and then at lunch and dinner, meals are provided in the field as well. So for those of you who have never cooked a meal at a campsite, it's really a great time to learn the skill of campsite cooking. And our meals vary as well. And then in the evening, that's time for leisure. You could go for a hike. You could write in your journal. You could sit around the campsite chatting with your fellow crew members and your new friends. And there's also a natural resources curriculum called the SEED curriculum that actually earns you high school credit. In addition to the high school credit, you also do get paid. So our members earn $300 a week. So for 5 weeks, that's going to earn you $1,500. If you complete the program safely, you're going to earn an additional $250 in bonuses. So that's a good chunk of change. That's also not taxed. So when it's all said and done, you're going to be walking away with a nice summer income. You earn 1 1/4 credit for for a high school. That's science credit and a physical education credit. So just a little bit something to help lighten your class load, hopefully. Our members come from all across the country, so you'll be meeting a bunch of really awesome people that you hopefully get to develop some lifelong friendships with while you're completing this work. And you're developing your future. This is a really hardworking position that you can put on your resume, whether or not, whatever career path you want to go in conservation, or even if you don't want to stick in conservation, that's fine. It's something that's a hardworking position for you that stands out on your resume. And again, you're making a big impact on our beautiful natural environment. Here's a nice shot of the campsite on one of our crews. And you can see there, those are the Three Sisters Mountains, just west of Bend, Oregon, where our crews are located, really having a great time around the campsite after a long work day, watching the sunset. And at that point, that's a brief summary on our positions. Again, I encourage you all to use the chat function and ask any questions you may have at this time.
Hey, Nate, I see a question in the Q&A. Christopher is wondering if there are still leadership rover positions still available.
Awesome. Great question, Christopher. Thank you. Yes, the answer is yes. We hire all of our leaders and assistant crew leaders very early on in the season. So those hirings are usually conducted in March and April. So at this point, we are full for the season, except for member positions. And we are always taking applications on a rolling basis. So you could also apply for a leader position for the fall session as well. Again, that's another advanced position to get you additional experience for your resume. So I see a question coming in about exceptions for 15-year-olds, and I want to be sensitive to time so our other panelists can speak as well. We do have a day program for 15-year-olds in Eugene and Portland, and also Tacoma, Washington. So there's plenty of opportunity for 15-year-olds as well. I see quite a few questions coming in, and I apologize, but we do need to get to our next panelist. So I will do my best to circle back by the end of the session and answer those. And as well, I'll also provide my contact information for you to reach out individually. So thank you all. And with that being said, I want to pass it over to Katie Holzer from the City of Gresham.
All right, thanks, Nate. And I'll just throw out there that I know several people personally, including my husband was a crew leader for NYC. It's really great experience, lots of hard work, good way to get started. So put in a plug for that. I'm glad to see there's interest. So my name's Katie Holzer. I work for the City of Gresham, which is a local government agency. And I'm going to be talking about a really different kind of job. I'm an environmental scientist. So instead of going out and building trails and using these tools, I'm doing scientific studies to figure out what are some of the best ways to answer some questions we have about the environment and maybe help inform where should we be planting the trees or removing invasives or what other things are happening. In an environmental science, the type that I do, I'm not in a laboratory, I'm not wearing a lab coat. The way you see this picture here where I have waders on, I have a water baler, I have a turbidimeter, those are my tools as a scientist. So I generally conduct studies of local streams and wetlands in the area to figure out some of the main questions are what types of pollutants are there, how can we reduce those pollutants, how are those affecting the wildlife that live there. And I really like this job because I get to answer questions that actually change the way that the city works. So I'm not just, answering a question that goes off into the ether and nobody cares about. The answers that I come up with then get pulled back into policy and laws to actually change the way that things happen. So you can go to the next slide. So here's sort of some examples of the types of things that I do every day. About half of my work is outside and about half of it is inside. So I plan studies, I go out and collect the data, maybe figuring out where the pollutants, what types are they, then I analyze that data. So I spend a lot of time then back at the computer working with statistical programs and making graphs, and then I put together presentations to give to the decision makers. So sometimes I'll be up in front of the mayor or city council saying, here's what we found out about something and here's how I think you should change this policy related to it. So it's I sort of get to see that entire part of the scientific process. And so you might like being an environmental scientist if you like being outside, but you also like dealing with numbers and data. If you're curious about how things work, if you like answering questions, if you like having impact on policies that you get to see. This job is something where I don't come in the morning and someone tells me what to do. There are a lot of jobs like that. It's much more open, here's some general questions, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how do I answer this, what tools do I need, how do I go about doing it. So if you like that type of freedom, this might be something you'd like. If you prefer to just show up at a job and do something, it might not be what you're interested in. And this type of position generally does require a lot of schooling. So if you're not into school, might not be what you're most excited about. But if you secretly love school, especially science and math classes, this could be a good option. For my background, I have a bachelor's degree in biology and a PhD in ecology, which is a lot of school after high school. That is 9 additional years in college and graduate school. But I wanted to throw out that as you get further along, school becomes a lot more interesting because you get to focus in on the things that you're most interested in and spend a lot of time really studying those. And I'll just mention it now, but if people are interested, I could talk more about it later. I know that the cost of college can be a huge barrier for a lot of people. But I want to say that for myself in particular, there are a lot of grants and scholarships out there that, I applied to over 100 to go to college and was able to fund my college with that. And then if you go to graduate school in the natural sciences, you actually get paid to go. They give you positions as a teaching assistant that pay for your tuition and to live. So if you're interested in science, just want to make sure that money shouldn't be the only barrier. There are ways that you can do it. And then here's an example of some of the other types of jobs. I had never thought that I would work for a government. In my mind, I thought of government as some, maybe big evil thing and you got to work against the man, But when you think about local government, when you think about cities or counties, they're the people who are fixing the roads, keeping the water clean, picking up the recycling. There's lots of cool jobs there. So other types of eco careers other than scientists, there's outreach with community members, there's working in schools, there's planning about where parks should be and what they should look like, there's restoration, planting trees, there's various types of data analysis, there's inspections of new construction sites and parks. So there's lots of different kinds of things you might be able to do. So I would have never thought to look for city or county jobs, but they're definitely out there. Then you can go to the next slide. So all those jobs I just mentioned are things that people generally get further along in their career once they have some more experience. But some things that younger students can do are lots of different types of internships. And they're available not only at the city or the county, but at lots of different organizations in the area. These are 2 that a lot of people do. One's called SummerWorks, and it's for people 16 to 24 years old, I believe. And they get placed at all sorts of different places. And then AmeriCorps is something that a lot of people also do as a first step into the environmental field. And one of our current AmeriCorps members, Allie, that's on the left of the picture here, is a panelist. So I'll let her talk more about AmeriCorps. But if there are any specific questions before we go on to Allie, I could answer those now. Okay,
Awesome.
I don't see any in particular, so we could just keep moving then.
All right. Great.
Thanks.
Awesome. Our next panelist is Allie McGarrigle, who is the AmeriCorps member, a tree health specialist with the City of Gresham. Allie, take it away.
Thanks, Nate. Hi, I'm Allie. I am an AmeriCorps member through Confluence Environmental Center's AmeriCorps program, and I work at the City of Gresham as their tree health specialist. And some of the things that I've been doing during my term with the city and with Confluence is forest health projects, looking at dead and dying trees and how we can better restore and repair the health of our forests out in Gresham, which is a bunch of GIS, which is Geographic Information System. So like making maps on the computer and field work, going out and verifying those maps are accurate, which I'm just starting to get into, which is exciting. And there's also a lot of education and outreach I've been doing with the city, which includes planning events, teaching in schools, volunteer coordination for big restoration projects, and then a lot of equity and environmental justice work, because that is what Confluence Environmental Center focuses on. trying to bring environmental services and programs to historically marginalized communities, which are focused primarily on communities of color and low-income communities. And I have been really loving being able to dive into that in AmeriCorps. You can go to the next slide, Nate. So a little bit about me. I was born in Bend, Oregon, over on the east side of the mountains. And when I was 10, my family moved to Beijing, China, and I spent 8 years of my life there, graduated from high school, started to get pretty interested in environmental sciences. And so I ended up going to Colorado College on a scholarship, and just graduated there last May, so basically a year ago, with an environmental science degree. And that was really awesome. And I got really into science and thought that I was gonna just jump right into more science, kind of like Katie's path. But I decided that I actually wanted to spend some time learning more about myself and learning more about service and how to be more engaged in communities that I'm in. And so I started looking at AmeriCorps and found Confluence Environmental Center's AmeriCorps program in Portland. And so that's where I ended up, and have been really loving the opportunities to have real experience engaging in diverse communities and pushing equity work in my work. And the thing, what's next for me, I'm not entirely sure. You know, with the pandemic, everything is pretty uncertain. And so a mantra I've been kind of holding with me that I learned from Zen Buddhism is the way things are is mysterious and hard to see. So I'm not exactly sure is what is next. So don't feel bad if you have no idea what you want to do next. It's really okay. Everyone feels that, especially in this global pandemic. So there's so many options. Don't get down on yourself. Don't worry. It will work out. You can go to the next slide, Nate. A little bit more about AmeriCorps. There's so many different opportunities and so many different sectors. It's kind of overwhelming. So I'm going to try to give you a really brief overview of different AmeriCorps opportunities that exist depending on your interest. So there's the 3 levels or 3 different kind of groups within AmeriCorps. There's the state and national, which is partnering with local or regional organizations in every U.S. state and territory. And there's over 10 different interest focus areas, from public health to environmental to so many different things. And they have everything from about 3-month to 12-month terms. So it's very, very, very large variety of things going on there. And then there's the National Civilian Community Corps, which is kind of similar to what Northwest Youth Corps is. There's both the traditional kind of corps, and then there's FEMA Corps, which is helping out with natural disasters, but it's a lot more based in a specific crew that travels around the country and works on different projects. And those are 10 to 12-month positions. And then finally, there's another program called AmeriCorps Vista, and that program specifically works to eradicate poverty and is about capacity building within organizations to help and serve people in poverty. And they have both a summer program and a 12-month program. And there's a variety of different requirements in terms of eligibility. I think most programs you have to be 17 or 18, and you have to have some sort of status of residency or citizenship within the US, just to put that out there. And for me, I'm part of the Confluence AmeriCorps group, and Confluence Environmental Center focus and centers around environmental justice, particularly racial justice within that. So how do we serve Portland metro areas, low income and communities of color that really have a lot of environmental needs that aren't being addressed. And we have 11-month terms, and there's tons of different positions. all across the city, from government to nonprofit. Johnson Creek Watershed Council, which Courtney will be speaking about later, is one of the partners. City of Gresham. There's solid waste and recycling programs that are partners. So it's really, really varied. And you don't have to have any sort of college certifications in order to qualify for AmeriCorps. There's many, you can access AmeriCorps at many different stages of your life. And why is it cool to have an AmeriCorps opportunity? First, you get money to go to college or further education, the Siegel Education Award, and it depends on how long your service term is to how much you get for that, but it's a substantial amount of money, which is awesome. You're also getting a lot of job skills and networking. There's so many people I've met in Portland in the environmental sector that I wouldn't have met otherwise, and that's really powerful. Also, it feels great to be able to serve a community and make some positive impacts. So I'll leave it at that and see if there's any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie. That's great. We saw a question in the chat box about those of you who may be interested in an AmeriCorps position. As an AmeriCorps alum myself as well, I'd just like to highlight that it's a great program. Allie highlighted a lot of the great benefits there, and we can see all the great stuff that she's been doing. So I highly encourage you all to look more into AmeriCorps. Great. Up next, we have Pablo from Friends of Trees. Pablo is the volunteer and outreach specialist. Pablo, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak into a phone here real quick, so hopefully you can hear me better. But my name is Pablo, and I work with Friends of Trees. I am their volunteer and outreach specialist. That's my title. And so what I do with the organization is I do a whole lot of volunteer communication. So I do emails, I do phone calls, I do just in-person interactions with folks who come into the office. I'm doing a whole lot of that. And so just a little bit about Friends of Trees. We were founded in 1989, so a couple years ago, you know. But it started as a very grassroots sort of organization, very little volunteers, very little just movement. But, you know, from 1989 till now, we've grown quite a bit. We have about 35 employees working between our Portland office, and then we also have the satellite office in Eugene. And that we've expanded quite a bit. So we used to be super Portland based, and now we're Portland Metro. We're out in Vancouver, Washington. We're in Salem, Oregon, again, down in Eugene. So we've grown quite a bit over the years. And in the summer, what I get to do is I go into community outreach events throughout the Portland metro area. So like street fairs. As we get into the fall, I go to a lot of college fairs. I go to some high schools. And so it's just, you know, a lot of fun to be able to be communicating and working with folks. And my journey to Friends of Trees was a little different, I would say. I actually got a chance to volunteer at a couple of events after I graduated from college. I went to Portland State University and graduated in the summer of 2015. And so I went to a couple of Friends of Trees events, and I didn't think nothing of it. And then when I saw an opportunity to work with them, I went ahead and applied. And the funny thing was, though, is that they actually looked me up and saw that I had volunteered with them in the past, and that was something that allowed them to be like, wow, Pablo has had interactions with us before prior to him applying. And so, you know, that was just one more grain of salt that added to, you know, potentially me being a good candidate for the organization. So I highly encourage folks, if you haven't done a whole lot of volunteering, to do that. Nate, do you think you could go to the next slide, please, for me? Yeah. And so just, you know, in a nutshell, what a day of volunteering with Friends of Trees looks like. Because we depend a lot on volunteers to come out and help us at our events. We're really powered through volunteer. And so, you know, we're all over the Portland metro area. We focus a lot on East Portland, so east of the river. We're out in neighborhoods like Lens, the Richmond neighborhood. We're out in Cully. We're out in St. John's, Centennial. We're just kind of all over the place. And so if you're ever interested in volunteering with us, I'm hoping that this post-COVID-19 life is a little different and we go back to a little bit more of a normal life. And so I'm hoping that we get to volunteer with folks again and plant trees. But if you're ever interested, you can always go onto our website, friendsofTrees.org, and find out information there. You don't have to come out with an adult if you're 15 or older. You just need a liability waiver signed, and you'll be able to go ahead and join our events. If you have family members that are interested in coming out too, we encourage that folks be at least 6 years old to enjoy the most out of our events. We won't turn anyone away. It's just that 6 years is when folks really get a whole lot out of us. But not to say that we wouldn't turn anyone away. But anyways, yeah, it's kind of some neat pictures there. You can always go onto our website too, friendsofTrees.org, and just see all the smiling faces and just folks getting muddy and planting trees and having fun. But yeah, that's all I got. And if you have any questions, I think I'm going to wait until the end for a little Q&A, and also share my contact info if you want to directly get in touch with me, and we can chat more about Friends of Trees, what I do, and potentially how to get involved.
Great. Thank you so much, Pablo. I really appreciate that. Friends of Trees does a lot of really great work, not only in Portland, but as you mentioned down here in Eugene, Springfield. A lot of more beautiful suburban areas are here because of Friends of Trees and the great work that Pablo and his team does. So thank you, Pablo. Great. Next up for us, we have Courtney Beckel, the Volunteer Program Manager from Johnson Creek Watershed Council. Courtney, take it away.
Courtney, you're on mute.
How embarrassing. What?
Good.
Thanks for saving me. So starting over here, my name's Courtney. I work with the Johnson Creek Watershed Council. I use she or they pronouns, either one. I joined the council in 2016, and our mission is to restore the creek with the help of the community. So for those of you who are familiar with it, Johnson Creek runs through southeast Portland. It starts up in the foothills of Mount Hood and runs down to the Willamette River. So what I do at the council is I manage the volunteer program. We work with about 3,000 volunteer signups every year. And as you can see, we power tree plantings, one really big litter cleanup in the summertime, and environmental education as well. Personally, what I do that as part of the volunteer program, and I also manage our workforce development partnerships and the implementation of our equity action plan. So before I got into the council, I kind of had a winding path, kind of like Allie was talking about. You never know where life is going to take you, but I got to taste a lot of different types of work. I worked in agriculture, I worked in state, federal, and nonprofit jobs, and mostly those jobs were centering around the conservation of endangered plants and wetlands. Super fun stuff. We're really lucky to do the kind of work that we do. So similar to Pablo, most of my work is indoor, but I do get to get out of the office every once in a while and actually get in the field. My personal specialties are developing programs like volunteer trainings and internships, and creating fulfilling partnerships and projects with other organizations. So one of the things that I like about this job is being part of the cultural change element of conservation work. So like one that can take many forms, and I could talk forever about this, but one really basic way that you can see cultural change with the Johnson Creek is over the last 30 years, all the work that has been done by community members to restore the creek. It used to just be known as kind of like Junk Creek, just kind of like this wayside, sad, dirty place. And it has, with a lot of effort and a lot of commitment from folks, it has really turned around. It's not perfect, but it's in a good trajectory right now. So, you know, people care, but they don't always know how help. And so it's really powerful to be able to provide meaningful opportunities to folks to work together and work on a singular project that you can feel good about. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide, Nate. Thank you. Okay, so education stuff. What kind of school do you have to do to get a job like this? I'd say in the nonprofit sector in general, speaking, that experience is probably more important than your diploma or any particular degree that you get for the most part, especially if you're managing programs, I guess you could say. So for me personally, well, maybe let's just go on to say, to mirror a little bit of what Pablo was saying, volunteering really does matter. That is a huge part of, you know, how you can prove your nonprofit work is all about like your convictions, right? And so if you can show that you have been engaged and involved for a period of time, that really goes a long way in the nonprofit world. So internships or serving on committees. I served on the fundraising and outreach committee for the Johnson Creek Watershed Council for 1.5 years before my current position came up. So, you know, just like Pablo said, like they look you up, that you start to get to know people, and yeah, here we are. Let's see here. Yeah, so personally, the education that I have a bachelor's in botany and applied ecology, but I also had 3 years of volunteer management experience at another nonprofit. And since then, I didn't need it to get the job, but to kind of make myself better at my job, I went on to get a graduate certificate in public and nonprofit management at PSU. So I think of that as like a baby master's, kind of, you could think of that like cheaper and faster. So that helped me kind of hone my skills working within and between organizations, kind of getting a better framework, especially if you're new to the nonprofit scene, which I wasn't, but if you were, it would be good to do it before, kind of get you a good look at how nonprofits work, boards, fundraising, managing people, and program evaluation, kind of stuff like that. So yeah, we can move on to our next slide here, Nate. Alrighty, so how we work with emerging professionals. There's a couple of different ways. Mostly we work through partnerships that I've listed out here, so take a look at those. The top two are our summer programs. We work with WEXI at ERCO and LYI usually to prep for our summer cleanup. It happens in August. It's a big litter cleanup. Usually people get in the water and pick up trash. Everything's different because of the coronavirus. It's going to look different, but we are hoping to host some interns this summer through those two programs. And then for our, we have a kind of like a living laboratory project at Leach Botanical Garden, and that's that second set with a little lightning bolt. So those organizations host interns that we work with for that project. You can learn environmental monitoring skills, leadership skills, and workforce development. And then the last piece is the one that we don't actually partner with someone to do. We directly work with bilingual interns, so those interns can kind of develop their own scope of work for a project to host for their own community in another language. So for example, we've had folks do presentations or like a nature walk and a presentation on pollinators, or a tour of Powell Butte and a planting. So basically totally up to the intern to figure out what their community really wants to see. So yeah, I think that's enough from me, and happy to be of service if anyone would like to contact me.
Amazing, cool. Thank you, Courtney. Yeah, a lot of really great opportunities to volunteer. I can tell you that volunteering with an environmental organization like any of those who have presented today is a really great way, especially if you're still in high school, to get something under your belt, a little experience, some familiarity with some of the projects that's conducted in our area. and just something to help push you along that much further and really see if you enjoy what it is that we do. So thank you to Courtney. There's some really great questions that have been flowing in through the chat function. With that being said, I would encourage you all to take the time to fill out a question and send it in to any one of us who presented today or anyone here on the panel, and we'd be happy to get to that. I'd like to start us off by asking you all, have any of you ever volunteered with an environmental organization or have any plans to, or are you considering volunteering now at this point? Awesome. So we've got some questions about volunteering. We can see Pablo has responded and mentioned that Friends of Trees is currently on hold for volunteer events, but they do hope to be back up and running again in fall, late October or early November. Again, many of our organizations are currently trying to, keep our stakeholders safe. So if you don't see any opportunities up right now, that's okay. Please be understanding and keep an eye out for future events. Pablo has also sent his email out in the chat function. So if you are interested in getting involved with Friends of Trees, it's available in the chat function for you. I see a question coming in for Northwest Youth Corps. Someone wanted to know if non-students can join NYC. The answer is yes. So we fill positions with members who are 14 and up. So I mentioned earlier on the call that our day program is for folks ages 14 to 19. So at that point, you can choose between the community program, and then once you turn the age of 16, that's when you can dive into our camping program. We do require that all of our members are 16 for the camping program because our camping crews work with the federal government, as I mentioned, the Forest Service and the National Park Service, and there's some federal restrictions that only allow 16-year-olds and up to receive that paycheck. But you don't have to be a student. You don't have to be in school at this time. Also, we have a young adult program that starts at the age of 19 and goes all the way throughout all of our lives up till whatever age you're still interested in doing environmental work. So we welcome everybody and we hope to see you apply. And I can submit my contact information in the chat function as well. It looks like we just got Courtney's email from Johnson Creek. Really great responses about volunteering. Thank you all for your thoughtful responses.
Hey, Nate, there's also a few questions in the Q&A again. I think we've answered some of these about the pay at NYC, and Valeria is asking about the fall dates for Northwest Youth Corps too.
Great, thanks Valeria. So our fall dates start in September. Our website has the most accurate reflection. I don't have it off the top of my head. I believe it's the 14th of September, and that runs until mid-October. So for those of you who either graduate, are going to take a gap year, or those whose schools might allow for an alternative education, come on out with us. We'd love to see you join our crew. Again, it's paid and you get high school credit. So our website, I'll enter that here in the chat function, is just nwyouthcorps.org. And then if you select on the programs tab, you will see all of our dates for the season. And let me just take a quick moment and enter that in. I see.
Yeah, Nate, and I see some people also ask for your direct contact info, so you can stick that in there. And then I saw someone saying that they're 15 and really interested in environmental stuff. So if we can reiterate what a 15-year-old can do. In general, I think volunteering is a really great place when it's allowed with the current situation. It sounded like NYC had something for 15-year-olds. But I think a lot of the other programs start at 16. So do any other panelists have anything else to reiterate for a 15-year-old?
You're welcome to volunteer with us when we're back up and running.
Awesome. I see a question here. How much do the NYC pay per week? So we pay our members $300 per week for the camping program. Our young adults, once you turn the age of 19, are AmeriCorps members, similar to what Ali is serving. So you're actually getting a living stipend of $2,600 for the term. It's a 2-month term. And you're also getting an education award in that AmeriCorps position. So I'm sure Ali has some really great information about an education award, but those can be used towards student loans, for college tuition, if you want to go that route. Also any certifications or additional schooling that you're interested in. So really valuable stuff. Again, I can't stress how great AmeriCorps is enough.
Yeah, and to reiterate, in case people aren't looking at the chat here, if people either are trying to use their AmeriCorps educational stipend for something or just looking for other training, several of us have said that community colleges in general, especially PCC, Portland Community College, and Mount Hood Community College, have a lot of really excellent quality programs with really excellent teachers at much more affordable prices than some other places. So definitely look into community colleges if you're looking for certificates or extra training.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Yeah. I see a question that, will there be a recording of this presentation available to share with interested students who weren't able to get on the call? The answer is yes. I know Julia may be able to share that for us at the end of this call. We'll be happy to make that available. Julia, can you correct me if I'm wrong about that?
You are correct. We'll have that recording available probably within the next few days on our event page.
Perfect. Are there any positions in the nonprofit sector geared towards specialized professions, i.e. engineers, scientists, etc.? I know Northwest Youth Corps does not. I will open this up to all the other panelists for any information they have.
Definitely. Yeah, there are.
Yeah. Awesome.
We work with several, most of our staff has been trained at some level through the sciences, whether their position is focused on science now. About the engineers, not sure if I can think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure there are. And then I'm also thinking of other positions in the nonprofit sector, like everybody needs an accountant, right? Like there's lots of ways to help cool organizations do their work. So we need a web developer really bad, like there's just like all these other pieces that you don't necessarily think about right away. So there's definitely multiple ways.
Awesome. Anybody else have any information about specialized professions in their organizations?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here real quick. At Friends of Trees, we have folks who are definitely educated in the hard sciences, so like they're marine biologists or tree ecologists, those kinds of things. But we also have folks who have majored in communications or have taken a lot of marketing classes and are able to work with our social media, work with our database that we use and all those things. So don't think that you need to get a very specific degree either. My degree was in social sciences, so very broad, took a lot of like anthropology, Black studies, Chicano Latino studies, and so I get to use that at Friends of Trees with how I communicate with folks. So just don't think that you need to focus solely on one thing potentially if you're trying to maybe get into the nonprofit world. I would say maybe branch out a little bit and take other classes too while you're in college if you're doing that.
Awesome. Thank you, Pablo. I know there was a question out there about 18-year-olds, anybody who's going into their first year of college. Absolutely. I believe I speak for most of us in saying that we all have opportunities available. I know you could be a Youth Corps member with Northwest Youth Corps. You could get involved with volunteering at Friends of Trees. I know Courtney's program has some volunteer options and potentially additional positions. I'll open that up to anybody to chime in if they have anything for 18-year-olds. I really like this question here that just came in about opportunities for non-degree seeking students. I want to add to everybody here that I actually did not complete my degree. I went to Prescott College in Prescott, Arizona for 1 year, studying environmental studies. I absolutely loved it. I rafted the Grand Canyon. I got to go hiking across the Southwest, and it was really amazing learning all the hard sciences as well. But I essentially, as Courtney mentioned, got this position through experience. I got involved with an internship with the National Park Service. I volunteered with environmental organizations, and I really just learned the ins and outs and got involved with a variety of organizations. And that led me into the position I am now. So I highly encourage you, do not get discouraged if you are not interested in pursuing a degree or it's not attainable. If it's not feasible for you, that's totally understandable. Please know that conservation is a field that you can absolutely pull off your dream job while working your way there without a degree. So I would encourage you all to continue the pursuit.
There's also, Nate, there's the Green Workforce Academy that's for 18 to 25-year-olds who want to get into the green sector if you're African American or Native American identifying. And that's a really cool opportunity, five-week paid internship program, and they help you kind of find jobs within the Portland metro area if you're Black or Indigenous.
And then there's just a general question about paid internships and where to find them. So in addition to all the links we've put here, on the webpage for here, there's a resource guide and there's links to all the different organizations here. Unfortunately, right now, everything's really up in the air about whether this summer there are going to be any paid internships. So I would, if I were you, I would scour all of those web pages and try to see if anyone is, accepting anything this summer and try to apply for them. But unfortunately, it's really uncertain right now.
Yeah. Great. I know we're coming close to the end of our call here. We will draw 3 winners for a $25 PALS digital gift card. Julia, do you have any additional information to share regarding the gift card winners?
I don't, just that we will draw those as soon as we can, and we will be notifying everyone through their email information in the form.
Perfect. Thank you, Julia. So keep an eye on your email, everybody. I want to try to get through as many last-minute questions as we can. I see there's a question from Valeria. Do you know any programs for Latinx identifying people? I'll quickly jump in real quick. We have a young adult program that's a Latinx crew. So folks who are Latinx identifying, we have a young adult program specifically for the Latinx community in the Mount Hood National Forest. So if you're interested in that, I submitted my email not too long ago. I encourage you to reach out. And then I'm going to open it up to the panels here for any information that they have.
I think we're probably running a little low on time. I think most folks have shared their contact information. And I also, Nate, if you could go to the last slide, I just want to remind everyone on the call today that we, that we put a lot of resources on the event page that you use to register. There's a whole document there that has a bunch of active links that you can use. And if there's